If you work at Disney, you're going to end up at some point dealing with pins. Our pin trading actually started on our first visit with the kids, but as you can see, it's kind of grown into a little bit of an obsession. But it definitely had an impact on my job as well, and what I did and how I did it. So, one of the things that happens when you work at Disney is you tend to get caught up in pins. Now, the very first time we really did much of anything with pin trading was actually when my kids were 4 and 5 years old. Pin trading was fairly new. We had read about it online. We were getting ready for the kids' very first trip to Disneyland. And our travel company that we booked, the Disney Travel Company, which I don't think even exists anymore, offered some free pins as part of the deal. I was like, sure, let's give the kids the little lanyards with some pins. And then I bought a few extra cheap pins from the park and gave the kids a little stack to be able to trade with and play with. And just let them play, trade for whatever they wanted. It was fairly new. There wasn't any problem with fake pins and other stuff. And if you're wondering about fake pins, I got whole videos about that. But we didn't do a whole lot. Added a few pins here and there. But for the most part, it really wasn't a big deal. And then I got to work at Disney. So I found out a few things about working at Disney pins. One, there are stores that sell to cast members directly, and they sell a whole stack of pins that are called cast member exclusives. And one of the things I started doing as I was working there was I began to buy pins particularly for the holidays that I was working. And so that's kind of where I started buying my cast exclusives. Yeah, my cast exclusives. Probably my biggest binder. But I thought it would be a neat deal to have pins that commemorated the days I worked. And so I started buying various pins that commemorated those holidays, those special days. And that was really kind of my first introduction to pin addiction, I guess you could call it. And I've got them all kind of separated out into various pouches. I found this is a very effective way to store your pins. But just from this page, and I'll post some closer pictures, but these are some of the pins that I bought while I worked there. Commemorating the holidays. They were cheaper pins than the other pins that you could buy in the park, but just as nice. They just didn't necessarily have the backer cards. But they're all limited editions. They're all pins that the only way you could get them was if you bought them at Company D, the cast store. And so I began to make a habit of going to Company D, particularly when I was working at Epcot and Hollywood Studios, MGM Studios, because the Company D stores there were actually in the parks. At Epcot, when you're walking through the cast center, you've got the big parking lot outside. You go through security, and then there's costuming and changing rooms. And then as you continue to walk through on your way into the park, a Company D store was right there. And that's where you could buy your stuff over at Epcot. Over at Hollywood Studios, the Company D store was actually in the employee cafeteria. And so you could stop on your breaks or whenever you were there. It was easy to get to. Over at Magic Kingdom, the Company D store was actually at Disney University, which means you had to go from the parking lot instead of in the park. You couldn't get there in the park. And from the parking lot in the back, you had to then walk across the street over to Disney University. It was a pain, so I didn't go to that one very often. But the other thing that we had at the time was something called the salsa sales. This would happen a couple times a year, where they essentially had a parking lot sale just for cast members. And what they sold in the parking lot was things in the parks that hadn't sold real well. So they still had leftovers, sometimes like huge amounts of leftovers. So I took advantage of that and bought stuff for Christmas and other things. They would sell pins out there, of course. But one of the things that they had that was amazing was they had grab bags. So you could buy a grab bag of pins. You couldn't see what was in it. it would be typically about $1 a pin. You buy a $15 grab bag and there'd be 15, sometimes 17 pins in there. So I began buying these grab bags at salsa sales. They would limit how many you could buy. Typically it was like 2 per sale. But I would buy these. I'd go through, pull the pins out I wanted, pull pins out for gifts for my family, and then I would have this leftover group of leftovers. Well, I found those were amazing in the parks. And I began to actually take them into the parks with me. Our pants there had this little side pocket that we could keep various things in. And I would typically keep a little stash of pins there. And they were amazing to reward guests who had done something nice. If you had a crying child and everybody wanted to get a picture and the child's upset and crying, they're great bribes. Hey, buddy, if you'll take a picture with me and give me a nice smile, I got a pin for you. I would carry these pins around as freebies, as giveaways, and use them to bless people. Well, lo and behold, after a little while of doing this, I find out about these things. These are the pixie dust pins, and I've got a couple of them that over the course of time slipped through and ended up home with me. I promise, not on purpose. But you could pick up some of these if once they knew who you were. If they knew that you were going to use them right, you could go over and pick up a handful. And so I would typically have 2 or 3 of these with me at a time. And you watch the guests. And when you see a guest do something nice, something extraordinary, something magical, you reward them. Hey, I just saw what you did. That was really cool. That was amazing. I love that. Can I thank you from Walt or from Mickey? And you would give them this. It's a set of 2 pins. They're exactly the same. One is for the guest to keep. The other is for them to actually tear off and hand to somebody else. And again, continue making the magic. So you've already seen them do that. Hey, here's another way to do it. These were not pins I would give to kids. These are pins I would give to adults. There were a couple times that kids got them. But generally, this was somebody that you saw do something special for somebody else. And kids, a lot of times, hey, if you give them a reward, they're going to keep it. So I would give my other pins to the kids. Now, as a photographer, we didn't wear lanyards. We did not pin trade unless we were in the view. Those pins on those lanyards were not ours. We actually would keep them in a cupboard behind the counter. And when you walk in, if you're going to be there for more than an hour, you'd grab a lanyard if there was some in there. The problem with the lanyards, and even more so now, is people buy cheap knockoff pins in bulk lots, and they're all fakes and they're junk. And so a lot of times what was on the lanyard was not good pins. Now, when I first started in 2006, it wasn't a real problem. They were pins that people didn't want, but most of them were real. But by the time I left in 2011, they were probably 75% junk, scrappers, fakes. Still some legitimate pins. But if you wanted to actually get legitimate pins and do some good trading, and I liked trading because it was fun, you would have to take the lanyards down to the refresh station. This was actually a place down in the utilidors that it was just a little closet-sized place. But there would be somebody there, and you take your lanyards, drop them off, and you'd come back 20 minutes later or something, and they would have refreshed them. They've pulled off all the pins that nobody wants, tossed them aside, and put all new pins on there. So you've got the new Trader Series and various other pins that are nice pins. And hey, now you're ready to go trading. We would typically have like 5 lanyards, and that was one of the things I loved to do. If I got there in the morning and I had somebody else to watch the counter, hey, I'm going to go refresh the lanyards. We weren't supposed to do it every day, but there were people that didn't do it at all. So I would come in. I didn't have a lot of shifts in the view, but when I did, you could usually tell the lanyards hadn't been refreshed in a while. So I'd grab them, head off down to the utilidors, and get them refreshed and ready to go, because that was fun. Today, if you go to the Disney parks, especially Disneyland or Magic Kingdom, there are places there in the parks where the pin traders have set up and they've got their books and their pins all over the place, and they've taken over the benches and taken over the tables, and some of them are really nice and some of them are not. Some of them will give you a fair trade, some of them won't. And I struggle with that because pin trading for me is something to make your day fun, to collect, but it's a way to meet people and make them smile and make them happy. And I don't like it when they have turned something that's fun into more of a business enterprise in the parks. If you want to do that at trade shows and pin meet and greets and stuff like that, yeah, fine. But I struggle when you come into the park, you're ready to have fun, you're ready to get immersed in the day, and then there's these people sitting with pins all over the place and you can't even sit down. At the time, lanyards were the thing to do. One of the things I found with lanyards is pins fall off. Most of the pins have this little black rubber backing. They do have locking backs you can buy. I don't really like those because sometimes they get stuck and jammed, and other times they actually break the post in the pin. But I didn't wear my pins. I might take them in a little book, something like this. And by the way, these are scrappers and fake pins, so don't look and go, he's ruining the pins. These aren't pins I care about. But I would carry my traders in a little book or in a bag or something like that to keep them safe and secure. And that way I didn't have to worry about losing them, because I had a couple times I lost pins. Yeah, that was not fun. Oh, and by the way, there are pins that cast members won't trade. There's this myth out there that cast members can't say no to a pin trade. Oh, yes, they can. They don't trade their name tags. They don't trade their service pins that are on their name tags. And the other, if it's on their name tag, they're not trading it. If they can recognize a pin as a fake, they don't have to trade it. Of course, who's going to tell a kid no? But they don't have to. If a pin comes from Universal, they don't have to take it. Or some other park. It has to be an official Disney pin. Now, that's expanded now to now there's Box Lunch and a whole bunch of other things that are now official Disney pins. But when I was there, if it was a pin that didn't come from Disney store and didn't come from in the parks, it wasn't going to be traded more than likely. Or at least if it was a copy of those. We knew to look for the pins that were sold out at the gift shops outside that were fakes. They had a different copyright thing on it. They would just say copyright Disney and have the wrong back. You can look at that and go, yeah, sorry folks, that's a fake pin. Not taking that one. I did tell people no a couple times. It was rare because, like I said, who wants to be the one to tell a kid no? In my case, I always like to try to make the kid's day. And, hey, if I end up with a fake pin, fine. I'll pull the pin off and I'll go down to refresh station and trade it in later. But yes, you can say no to a trade, but you're probably not going to if it's a child. If it's an adult and you can tell they know better, yeah, there are a couple times they did that. I had one that actually got mad at me, just one. Only one time, and all the time it was at the park. I had one I told no. They got mad. You have to take the pin. No, I don't. That's obviously not a real pin. That's a fake. It's not even a good fake. Sorry. You need to trade official Disney pins. Well, it looks like a pin. No, the coloring is all wrong. I actually managed, they gave me the pin, and I still have it all these years later. And it is this ugly Snow White, and it's just wrong. The weight's wrong, the back is wrong, everything about the pin is just wrong. Now, I happen to have some pins in my pocket, and I says, I'll tell you what. I've got some inexpensive pins. I'll give you a real pin for it, but I'm not going to let you pull one off the lanyard because you're going to be denying a kid the opportunity to get a good pin for this. So I traded them actually from a couple in my own pocket. They didn't get what they wanted, but they got a real pin so they could trade later on. Then they immediately turn around. Well, now can I trade for that one? No. Because I just told you couldn't have it. I'm saving it for a kid. Go trade with somebody else's lanyard. Yeah, they were starting. I should go to City Hall. Go ahead. And funny thing was, I actually had another family there that was like, thank you for not doing that. Yeah, it was just starting to become a problem. But Disney pins definitely played an impact. I was grateful I wasn't a ride operator because they would sometimes have people, while they were operating rides, try to come up and say, hey, can I trade pins? No. But yeah, Disney, that's where the addiction started for me, was while I was working and trading with people in the parks, trading, with the guests, blessing the guests, buying cheap pins. And as you can see, it's kind of grown since then. Yeah, I love my pins. I do. And I try to make them a decent investment versus junk. Did you enjoy this? What's your experience with pins? Do you enjoy pin trading? Do you collect? I'd love to know. Please share it in the comments below. Thank you so incredibly much for supporting me, for watching. If you want to know more about the financial support and the patrons, well, check the link below and check the trailer. Thank you so incredibly much for watching. God bless. I don't like it when they've turned it from our cat just knocked something over.
Wow, look at all those names.
Yeah, that's all of our supporters on Patreon and our YouTube members.
Oh, that's cool. That's actually how I started out.
Yeah, it was. But of course, you remember, you have to be a subscriber first.
And yeah, if you haven't done that, be sure to hit that button right there.
Yeah, not the cat, just the button. And if you want to see another one of our videos, hit that button over there.
And if you want to know more about supporting us, hit that button.
Of course, you don't want to hit my buttons. That makes me sing.
No. And we do not want to do that to Craig.
Well, maybe...
Thanks for watching.
God bless.